Be me, Arya, 34, Human Resources Director at manufacturing company. Been revolutionizing workplace culture for 3 years now. Finally implementing the changes this backwards industry desperately needs. Today feels different though. Something big is happening. Sitting in my corner office, reviewing the quarterly anonymous employee satisfaction survey results. Always look forward to these, because they validate the progressive policies I've been championing. Open the PDF file expecting the usual mix of responses. Scroll down to the section about workplace concerns and threats. Nearly drop my coffee mug. The question reads, what do you consider the biggest threat to your job security and workplace safety? Expected answers about machinery, accidents, chemical exposure, maybe layoffs. Instead staring at a pie chart that makes no sense. 99% of male respondents selected Human Resources Department policies and enforcement. 1% selected physical workplace hazards. This has to be wrong. Reread the question 3 times. Check the methodology notes. Sample size: 847 male employees across all departments. Response rate: 94%. Margin of error: less than 1%. My hands are literally shaking. This is impossible. I've spent years creating inclusive spaces, addressing systemic inequalities, protecting vulnerable workers. How could they see my department as threatening? Clearly, there's been some kind of error in data collection. Immediately call Maverick from IT. He helped design the survey platform. Maverick, I need you to double-check the survey results. There's obviously been a mistake. What kind of mistake, Arya? The male employees apparently think human resources is a bigger threat than actual safety hazards. That's clearly wrong. Long pause on the line. I ran diagnostics twice. Everything's working correctly. Well, run them again. This data is impossible. Spend the rest of the morning poring over the detailed comments section, reading response after response, expressing frustration with arbitrary enforcement and unclear guidelines. One comment reads, walking on eggshells every day, never know what innocent remark will get flagged. Another says, feel like I'm being watched constantly, afraid to have normal conversations. This is clearly a coordinated effort, probably organized by some disgruntled employees who resist progressive change, need to address this head-on before it spreads. Decide to schedule individual meetings with department heads. Start with Jake from operations, been here 8 years, generally reasonable guy. Call him into my office around 2 p.m. Jake, thanks for coming in. I wanted to discuss the recent survey results. Oh, the one about workplace threats? Yeah, figured you'd want to talk about that. His tone already sounds defensive. There seems to be some confusion about human resources' role in workplace safety. No confusion on my end, Arya. Your policies are absolutely the biggest threat to my job. Taken aback by his directness. That's a very serious accusation, Jake. Can you explain what you mean? Where do I even start? Last month you wrote up 3 of my guys for telling jokes during break time. Those weren't jokes. They were inappropriate comments that created a hostile environment. They were talking about a TV show. Kevin mentioned he thought the actress was attractive. Comments about women's appearances contribute to objectification culture. Jake's face is getting red. Arya, these are grown men having normal conversations. You're creating an environment where nobody can relax. I'm creating an environment where everyone feels safe and respected. Safe from what? Kevin's been here 12 years. Never had a single complaint until you decided his opinion about a TV actress was dangerous. This conversation is going nowhere. Jake clearly doesn't understand the broader context of workplace dynamics. Jake, I appreciate your perspective, but there are complex power structures at play that you might not fully grasp. He stands up abruptly. There's that condescending tone again. You want to know why we all voted human resources as the biggest threat? Because you talk to us like we're children or potential criminals. I speak to everyone with respect and professionalism. No, you speak to women like colleagues and men like suspects. That's completely unfair. Jake, that's not true. I apply policies consistently across all demographics. Really? Because last week Sarah from accounting made the exact same comment about that actor in the superhero movie, and somehow that wasn't objectification. Different situations require different responses. Context matters, Jake. Historical power dynamics between men and women create different implications for similar statements. He's shaking his head. Listen to yourself, Arya. You're saying the same words mean different things depending on who says them. That's not equality. He clearly doesn't understand intersectional analysis. This is exactly why these policies are necessary. Jake, I think this conversation demonstrates why continued education about workplace inclusivity is so important. Education? You mean those mandatory seminars where you lecture us about unconscious bias for 3 hours? Those sessions provide valuable insights into... They're humiliating. You had us do role-playing exercises where we had to practice not being offensive, like we're toddlers learning not to hit. Those exercises are evidence-based training methods. Professional development sometimes involves uncomfortable growth. Jake, uncomfortable? Try demoralizing. You want to know what my takeaway was from that session? Waiting for his response. That you fundamentally don't trust any of us. That you assume we're all one comment away from harassment. That's not the message those trainings are designed to convey. The goal is prevention and awareness, not assumption of guilt. Then why does every example in your presentations feature men as perpetrators and women as victims? Because those reflect real-world statistical patterns. I use realistic scenarios based on documented workplace incidents. Every single one? In 3 hours of training, you couldn't think of one example where a woman might cross a line? This is becoming unproductive. Jake is clearly too emotionally invested to engage rationally. Jake, I think we should continue this conversation when you've had time to process. Process what? The fact that you've created an environment where half your workforce lives in constant fear of saying the wrong thing? That's a significant exaggeration. Is it? Because Danny from maintenance told me he's started eating lunch in his truck because he's afraid to join conversations in the break room. If Danny feels that way, he should come speak with me directly. Anonymous surveys aren't the appropriate venue for addressing specific concerns. Anonymous? You want names? Fine. Let me get Maverick, Kevin, Robert, and Tyler up here right now. Jake, I don't think a group confrontation would be productive. Neither did I, until I realized you're never going to listen to one person at a time. Before I can respond, Jake's already on his phone. Maverick? Yeah, come up to Arya's office. Bring Kevin and the others. This is escalating unnecessarily. Jake, I really think we should schedule separate meetings. Why? Afraid to hear from multiple people at once? Afraid the pattern might become obvious? Within 10 minutes, 5 men are crowding into my office. Maverick from IT, Kevin from operations, Robert from sales, Tyler from quality control, all looking frustrated and determined. Maverick speaks first. Arya, we've been talking, and Jake's right. We need to address this situation directly. I'm always available to discuss workplace concerns through proper channels. Proper channels? You mean the ones where you take notes and then implement new policies based on our feedback? That's not how the process works. I document conversations to ensure consistent policy application. Kevin jumps in. Those notes you take, do they ever include anything positive about male employees? I document all relevant workplace interactions. That's not what I asked. When's the last time you wrote something good about one of us? I maintain professional documentation, focused on improvement opportunities. My role requires focusing on areas that need attention. Tyler steps forward. See, that's the problem right there. You only see us as problems that need attention. That's not accurate, Tyler. I work with all employees to maximize their potential. When? When do you work with us? Because every interaction I've had with you has been about something I did wrong. Professional development often involves corrective guidance. Growth requires acknowledging areas for improvement. Robert, who's been quiet, finally speaks. Arya, do you actually like men? That's an inappropriate question. My personal feelings are irrelevant to professional policy implementation. That's not a no. My job is to ensure equitable treatment for all employees, regardless of personal preferences. Maverick shakes his head. Listen to yourself. You can't even say you don't dislike us. I treat everyone with equal professionalism. Equal? Really? Because when Jennifer from Human Resources Planning made that comment about the UPS driver being attractive, you laughed and said, I know, right? Different contexts require different responses. Workplace dynamics involve complex interpersonal factors. Kevin's getting visibly angry. Stop deflecting. Just admit you have different standards for men and women. I apply policies consistently within appropriate contextual frameworks. Contextual frameworks? Just say, double standards. Aria. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of how systemic inequalities function. Historical power imbalances require nuanced approaches to achieve true equity. Jake slams his hand on my desk. There it is. You think we're all oppressors who need to be controlled. I never said that. You don't have to say it. It's obvious in every policy you've implemented. My policies are designed to protect all employees. Workplace safety requires proactive measures to prevent harassment and discrimination. Tyler starts pacing. Safety. From what? Aria? Name one incident of harassment in this company before you got here. The absence of reported incidents doesn't mean incidents didn't occur. So you're solving problems that might have existed but probably didn't? Prevention is more effective than reaction. Robert's voice rises. Prevention of what? Us being normal human beings? Professional behavior standards benefit everyone. Whose standards? Because none of us agreed to live under your personal definition of professional. These standards are based on established best practices. Industry research supports comprehensive workplace conduct policies. Maverick pulls out his phone. Want to know what industry research says? I looked it up after your last training session. I'm familiar with current literature. Really? Because according to the Society for Human Resource Management, companies with overly restrictive policies see decreased productivity and increased turnover. That study doesn't account for long-term cultural benefits. Immediate metrics don't reflect comprehensive cultural transformation. Kevin throws his hands up. Cultural transformation? You mean creating a culture where half the workforce is afraid to speak? Open communication flourishes in environments free from harassment. Free from harassment or free from masculinity? Because it seems like you're trying to eliminate anything remotely male from this workplace. That's a significant mischaracterization. Gender equality doesn't require eliminating masculine traits. Jake leans forward. Then explain why every policy you've implemented targets male behavior specifically. Policies address documented problematic patterns. Documented where? By who? You. By research institutions and workplace advocacy organizations. Multiple credible sources inform policy development. Tyler sits heavily in a chair. Aria, do you realize that you've never once admitted you might be wrong about anything? I'm always open to constructive feedback. No, you're not. Every time we explain how your policies affect us, you explain why we're wrong to feel that way. Feelings aren't the basis for professional policy decisions. Emotional responses must be balanced against objective workplace needs. Robert stares at me. Do you hear yourself? You just dismissed our feelings as irrelevant, while demanding we consider everyone else's feelings constantly. Different situations require different approaches. Based on what? Gender? Because it really seems like you think our feelings don't matter because we're men. That's not true. All employees deserve consideration within appropriate professional frameworks. Maverick stands up. Appropriate according to who? You keep using these corporate phrases like they mean something. I use precise language to ensure clear communication. Clear? Nothing you say is clear. It's all buzzwords designed to avoid admitting you just don't like us. Professional discourse requires specific terminology. Effective workplace communication utilizes established professional vocabulary. The room goes quiet. All 5 men are staring at me. Jake speaks slowly. Aria, we've been trying to tell you for an hour that your policies are destroying morale, and your response is to lecture us about vocabulary. They're misunderstanding the scope of the conversation. Systematic workplace issues require comprehensive analysis beyond individual emotional reactions. Kevin starts laughing, but not in a happy way. There it is again. Every time we try to explain how we feel, you tell us our feelings are wrong or irrelevant. I'm trying to provide context for broader workplace dynamics. No, you're trying to avoid admitting that maybe, just maybe, you've made some mistakes. Tyler looks exhausted. Aria, can you name one thing you've done wrong since becoming Human Resources Director? That's not how continuous improvement works. Professional growth involves ongoing assessment rather than binary success-failure evaluations. That's not an answer. Can you name one mistake you've made? I continuously evaluate and refine approaches based on emerging best practices. Robert shakes his head. She literally cannot admit fault. Not even a small one. My role requires confident leadership in implementing necessary changes. Confident leadership or stubborn refusal to listen? There's a difference between confidence and stubbornness. Effective leadership sometimes requires maintaining position despite opposition. Maverick looks around at the others. Guys, this is pointless. She's never going to change. Change isn't always necessary when approaches are evidence-based. Evidence-based? What evidence? The survey that shows 99% of us consider you a threat? That survey reflects resistance to necessary progress. Initial resistance to progressive policies is well documented in change management literature. Jake stands up. And there it is. When presented with overwhelming evidence that your approach isn't working, you dismiss it as resistance to progress. Transformational change often encounters initial pushback. Initial. Arya, you've been here 3 years. This isn't initial anything. They're clearly not ready for productive dialogue. Perhaps we should schedule follow-up meetings when everyone has had time to reflect. Kevin laughs harshly. Reflect? You want us to reflect on why we're wrong to dislike policies that make us miserable? Self-examination can provide valuable insights. Into what? How to better accept being treated like potential criminals? This conversation is going in circles. They're too emotionally invested to engage rationally with systemic issues. I think we should table this discussion for now. Tyler stands up. Of course you do. Anytime we try to explain our perspective, you shut it down. I'm not shutting anything down. I'm suggesting a more structured approach. Structured how? More forms to fill out? More training sessions where you lecture us about our unconscious bias? Robert heads toward the door. Come on, guys, she's never going to listen. I listen to all employee concerns. No, you hear the words, but you don't listen. There's a difference. I listen carefully to all workplace feedback. Listening means considering that you might be wrong. Arya, you've never once considered that possibility. As they file out, Maverick turns back. You know what the saddest part is? We used to like working here. The workplace is more equitable now than it's ever been. For who? Because it's definitely not better for us. Equity benefits everyone in the long term. After they leave, I sit alone in my office, reviewing the conversation. Clearly, there's significant resistance to progressive change. This is exactly why strong leadership is necessary during cultural transitions. Transformation is never easy, but it's essential for creating truly inclusive workplaces. Spend the evening researching change management strategies. Find several articles about overcoming resistance to diversity initiatives. One study shows that employee pushback often intensifies before acceptance occurs. This must be the intensification phase. Tomorrow, I'll implement additional training sessions. Maybe bring in an external consultant to help explain these concepts from a different perspective. Clearly, my internal efforts aren't translating effectively. Draft an email to the executive team recommending enhanced diversity and inclusion programming. Include data about the correlation between initial resistance and long-term cultural success. Emphasize the importance of staying committed to progressive policies despite temporary opposition. Review the survey results one more time. 99% of male employees considering human resources a threat clearly indicates deep-seated bias against progressive change. This level of coordinated resistance suggests systematic problems with male workplace socialization. We need to address these underlying issues through comprehensive intervention. Start planning a mandatory all-hands meeting about unconscious bias and resistance to change. Invite a speaker who specializes in helping men understand their role in workplace equity. Schedule additional one-on-one coaching sessions for department heads. The fact that they're so threatened by basic equality measures proves how necessary this work is. Their emotional reactions demonstrate exactly the kind of defensive behavior that perpetuates systemic inequality. If anything, today's conversation confirms that current policies aren't strong enough. Make a note to research more robust accountability measures. Maybe implement peer feedback systems where employees report problematic behavior. Consider mandatory mentorship programs pairing male employees with female colleagues. Check my calendar for tomorrow, 3 meetings with female employees who've expressed appreciation for the inclusive environment. Their positive feedback confirms that these policies are working for the people who need protection most. The survey results are clearly an anomaly, possibly the result of organized resistance from employees uncomfortable with progress. Real change takes time, and temporary opposition is expected. To end the day feeling confident about the path forward. Sometimes, leadership means staying the course, despite criticism. These men will eventually understand that these changes benefit everyone. They just need more time and education to overcome their unconscious biases. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities to advance workplace equity. Their resistance only proves how much this work is needed.